Welcome to DIA and welcome to Readings in Contemporary Poetry. I'm Megan Whitco. I'm an assistant curator here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening. I'm also very pleased to welcome our two poets, Christine Kanownik and Ron Horning. Thank you both for being here and for bearing with us as we had to reschedule this due to snow that it seems impossible to imagine was only a month ago. So thank you all. Readings in Contemporary Poetry is a part of the Sackler Institute at DIA Art Foundation. And we also want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to Levi Gorvey Gallery, who provides major support for the series. Additional support is provided by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as our media sponsor, the Brooklyn Braille. And we also want to thank Brooklyn Brewery for the complimentary cold beverages, as well as assistance from all of DIA's staff in coordinating this series, and particularly Mary Catherine, Max, Francesca, and Maria. So following our first reader this evening, we'll have a 10-minute intermission before we resume with the second speaker, and we will have titles by both poets available for sale up front, as well as copies of our newly published Readings in Contemporary Poetry and Anthology, which covers the years 2010 to 2016. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, I encourage you to do so at the intermission. And without any further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Readings in Contemporary Poetry series curator Vincent Katz, who's going to introduce our first poet for the evening.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you all for coming. It's been quite a month. It continues to be. I think we have 4 events here and elsewhere this month, so that's quite something. And also, I want to make note of our final reading of this season, which will take place on May 9th. And we'll be having Eleni Sikelianos and Will Alexander. So please come back for that one as well. Christine Kanownik is the author of the chapbook We Are Now Beginning to Act Wildly, published by Diaz Press in 2012, and the collection King of Pain, published by Monk Books in 2016. Her poetry can or will be found at the publications EOG, Fence, Huffington Post, Jubilat, and Poetry Crush, among others. She lives and works in New York City. In her poem, Practical Magic, Christine Kanownik asks, "Can I, like the sea, be both obscure and adored?" We as readers want to answer yes, and so we do. Her admirable ambition to be both huge and invisible is worked out in her poetics. Her lines appear gracefully. We are able to follow her passages, and yet her poetry is even more capacious than her stated ambition. Her poems feel unpretentious, like someone thinking aloud, but there is surprising specificity in her language and unexpected turns of thought. An air of depression creeps in occasionally, but it's almost always a smokescreen. The poet brings it up as an emblem of big city life, only to knock it down by means of another of urbanity's tropes, the ability to push ahead regardless. One poem begins, "The week has passed again. I'll ask someone who knows, and it will be a day again without strife." The comma after the word day significantly shifts the empathy in this passage toward continuing, the again taking on an extra emphasis. Elsewhere, Kanownik is able to communicate something essential about being human in a poem ostensibly about fencing. As she puts it, knowing isn't the point. Yet, Christine Kanownik knows a lot more than she lets on in her laconic lines. She knows miracles aren't all white doves. She knows that music doesn't come from a computer. I'm excited to see where she takes her poetry, and us, Please welcome Christine Kanownik.
Thank you, Vincent, for that really great introduction, and everyone for being here, and Megan for all your help in scheduling and rescheduling this event. So I think I'll just go ahead and get started with a few poems from my book, King of Pain. And actually starting with a practical magic. Can I, like the sea, be both obscure and adored? Can we ask for more water and then actually receive more water? I breathe out. I am being very generous, I think. My love for you is painful for the both of us, so perhaps I'll stop doing it. When I look at you, you take up all the moonlight. You are not as generous as I am. My eyes may have come out of my skull, but I vacuum for no one, and I will take that to my grave. Just want to make sure I wasn't going to trip over that chord. Then competent eclipse. I want what I want because the sun asks me to want. To spin around the already spinning is pretty fucking lame. I am tired of justice, but a cup of coffee later and I'm your king. What I'm saying is that your paisley is flawed, your moon is too full. No one wants to be here on this fat earth. Celestial bodies, we want freedom and revolution. I'm done being funny. I'm done laughing and being laughed at. It is time to burn down, cut off, vomit out. And I say this all in the nicest possible way. A dangerous man. A dangerous man is a man who meets a woman. He says, hello. And she may also say, hello. But then she slowly starts to disintegrate. Why do you need to absorb her? She was fine the way she was before. True story. The Devil's Book. The devil is usually never alone, says a man, and then a voiceover of a man. They point and stare at the reimagings of the Devil's Book. I quickly become an expert of falling into traps. When the devil finally takes me, all my favorite things will spring from the ground around me. What is there even to see? Bones, not my own, the rejection of thought becoming a talk show, my loneliness and strict abundance. Wake up! The dawn is calling. There are so many spinning things squirreled away and spinning. Your old roommate's bad advice. There is something to say still, isn't there? They weren't lying. They usually lie. I usually lie back. This poem, during the intermission, I have a broadside of this available for $5 because I'm hustling currently. America. America was never that great. Time ripples like dogs. I'm trying to stomach the disappointment, but in the meantime, I'll take whatever you're having. That's a fun fact. I wrote that like in 2013. The feminine loss. Greater still. I'm alone. I put my heart around something, a washer-dryer combo with the spiritual sense of technology. Rocks happen by chance. No one here bolts the door. Love is so sore. Anyway, living this long, it is a project. The water. The water, the waves, they wake up, ask, what have I missed? I don't sleep. What have I missed? A case of knives. I don't sleep. They congratulate my presence, but I don't sleep. I have no waves. In solid, wet shapes, I don't sleep. I have no waves. A prism of sleep, like deep pockets. I am awake and have no wakes. The wave is beautiful and I miss nothing. The wave, I am degraded. I want milk. I want light. 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 I turn to her as if a mannequin. I want to shut the door and the noise of the shutting door. I want light. She's not an idiot, but she dressed like one. Oh, the autumn leaves. I like the ocean. I want milk. I want light. Don't be an idiot, she says into the floor. I don't want her. I want light. I want to put clothes on her. I want the clothes to be made of light, or to be light, or to feed her, or to be self-sustaining in some other way. I want to close the door on light. I want it. I want the door. When I become light, I met a man there. He said, you are light. I said, I want milk. He said, that is impossible. I said, I want milk. You are light. I want milk. You are light. I want milk. You are light. I am 8. There are 8 of us. I want us to be full force of man. I want milk, I said 8 times in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. In 3 minutes and 40 seconds, I was dressing in the dark, but then I became light. I was tying my shoes in the dark. My little tabs say sign here, which I keep on thinking are like sign is in like fate is leading me here. And it is. It's leading us all here. Solaris. Was it an ordinary fog? Of course it wasn't. Fine, go on. Looking out, there is just rain, ordinary rain, and a babe left out in the rain. A gray fog descends. I think at first it is smoke, or the kind of steam that you see when you walk through Manhattan at night, but it doesn't clear up. My understanding of Satan has been stressful and disorganized for my entire life. I'm looking to change that now. It is wet and heavy. It is wet and heavy like a man wet with rain, descending a staircase, not naked, worse than naked. Not in space either, just on a terrible, noisy horse. I'm not alive. I'm just a product of living. Like the moon, a deep space for light, probably still sleep, or a mask of sleep. Blessings on he who invented sleep. And this is where we fail, in drinking water, but not in love. You never get used to all these resurrections. I've removed my face, my weight, my hair, one mask, the other mask, the paintings I made with you last night. I've removed them all, so I may fall at your feet. What's left of the sun gives you what you want, but you don't want it. Then you are angry. Then what you want is filled with despair. Whenever we show pity, we ravage ourselves. We all know this to be true. What's going to be next? This one actually, I wasn't going to read, but a series of coincidences led me to believe. So this one is very fortuitous for all of us. My father is the Sea King. I woke up one day in June, freeborn and 30, knowing I was a traitor. I have never been to the ocean before. I cannot stand boats or rivers or streams. They destroy my equilibrium. Streams and rivers, rivers and seas. It is strange being led firmly towards the blue. But I feel the day and the waves of the day. I am the wave's finest day. On the 11th day, I realized that if I was one day, I was 37 and therefore my father's age. Did you know that my father is the batting king? I have no sea sea legs. I have no love for concessions or competition. His average is impeccable and dust is brown. It is hard to work on your birthday. It is hard to wake up and know that you are 16 and your father is the motion king. I have been standing still for all 59 years of my life, but that doesn't change the facts. We live in a violent domain, and we are rich. So rich that I woke up, and during the night, I had turned the big 4-0. 4 decades is a long time to be anywhere, even the earth. My father is not the earth king. Since no one can rule the entire earth, my father is the king of Crazy Ronald. Crazy Ronald is only one man, but not easily contained. It doesn't bother me, since I have never met the man. Today is my 3rd birthday, and I insist on destroying my father, who is no real king at all. When he is dead, I will inherit nothing. Nothing. Trees, nothing. Trees, nothing. Since the moment I was born, he has been pushing me towards the green. And I know the trees are green. And I hate that about them. Hey, hillocks and hollows, hollows and hillocks. I am the empire of the truth. I will never say that out loud, yet I have no problem being related to someone so powerful and yet so temporary. My one wish on my 72nd birthday is that when the earth starts to crumble, that my father, the Road King, is safe and sound. My father is the king of free will, and I am immortal, and have therefore ceased to keep track of my birthdays. My birthday is a times table. My birthday is the square root of my favorite number. My birthday is the number of hours it takes for Mars to crash into that lake over there. My birthday is telling you to shut up. My birthday had a really great time last night. My birthday has killed my father before my father could kill my birthday. My birthday is killing my father. My birthday is frantic. I am 27 and my birthday is relieved to tell you that. And now I will transition to some newer poems from a manuscript about decapitation. So I went from King of Pain to decapitation. I actually was like that's too depressing. I need a break from that. But then Trump was elected, and what's the point? You know, it is what it is. American Beauty. The computer doesn't know what I'm writing. My hand won't know when my head is dead. The internet does know I'm a Gemini. They've already felt the clever come down, splitting everything in two. I won't know until I'm properly removed. A rich system of symbols leads easily from rain to my hatred of rain. My fear of language and symbolism inherent in both the female and male form, love being impossible when it's committed to this binary. The time of the dead land has come, as absurd and predictable as the opening of a new social media account, lousy with brunch in the dead land, a friend of the devil is a friend of mine, etc. When putting this together, I realized that I have a lot of poems about Satan, and I was going to change the order so I wasn't going to read all the poems about Satan, but once again, Trump's president, what's the point? Satanic panic. I was exactly what I wanted to be, hunted. When you are driving at night, do you tend to look in your rearview mirror more or less? What do you see each time? 1, nothing. 2, the empty road. 3, a dark figure in the back seat. 4, headlights approaching. 5, taillights departing. 6, something you need. Tally your score. Now convert your children to the Church of Satan. I gave my body to Satan once. He never called, but I am filled with dark magic. These are the cult of the head. Fertile chaos for sure, but this all just doesn't begin. It doesn't spring out of the spray. It has always existed, boys and girls, Mr. and Mrs. America. Before the earth, there was a bloody head of the sun in the sky, someone's murdered brother. We needed his death, like we need the death of the saints to prove that God loves us. We are all potentially the lamb and the slaughter, the dead head and the rapist, Gwyneth and Kevin Spacey, in the sun / are the sun. baby hole. It's like reading a book, an entire book, without a sense of accomplishment. You are terrible and I hate you, said one person to their friend before breaking into song. Suffering is a long black gown I put on when I want to feel special and listen to some Sabbath. Drink something straight out of the bottle. Are any of us important, deserving of love? A wave fighting its way onto the shore. I don't want to write about bodies anymore or the head being removed from the body. But language has its origin in the various ways to trap women, to punish them for justifiable acts like breathing while fucking. I loved him but not his cock, since I had no body to receive it. My mind is friendly and warm, maybe even soft. It wants to lie somewhere comfortable. It thinks about recovery and tries to recover. In which the protagonist eats naked, unaware of certain tragedies. The theory of the wild woman and the teachings of Madame Blavatsky were not far from my mind. The earth's cycles and the undiscoverable language. A woman who makes a lot of decisions for lots of people heard a Fleetwood Mac song at a bar and needed to leave immediately, as if bitten by a snake. Like Faust at his lover's grave, the protagonist barely remembers Faust, but I remember the devil and the dead lover quite well. How many times have I been killed by the soulless? But the protagonist of Stevens is self-indulgent pagan, dancing around the fires of I don't remember before the Puritans put them out. But seriously, we ask, what are you doing now? What have you done all day? Fertility. Imagine the red sun orb. Imagine it radiating from inside, radiating from your belly button, from what once connected you to woman, now radiates with the sun's rays. Two sisters cut off their own heads, presenting them to their teacher, then standing on the bodies of copulating couple. My lolling tongue makes them uncomfortable in my undone hair. Or no, matronly hair and headlessness, like why do your hair if you're only gonna cut off your own head? Okay. This is going to be my second to last, penultimate poem. There's a word for that. The labor of being. The ball at the top of my spine keeps spinning. I cannot relax or see. If I have a dream about being in labor, does that mean I'm pregnant? Van Gogh plowed the fields and painted the plowing of the fields in every image of a plowed field. But still, his paintings were never plowed fields. No actual plower actually existed. If I have a dream about dying, does that mean I'm dead? I'll take his eyes with me when I pass. We get through this by getting through this. Every stroke belies fertility. I am a pomegranate split open. I am the pomegranate seeds. I am juice spilt. I want the truth in my mouth, hard and round like candy you cannot chew or swallow. If I have a dream about a python in my bedroom, does that mean I'll finally get laid? Instead, I'm a partridge dressed for the holiday. Instead, I am the expressive use of paint ridiculed by my peers. Instead, my stars became a maelstrom of light. Instead, I am the dream that means absolutely nothing. Once again, thanks everyone for coming out. I'm really excited to read with Ron. And that's all I'll say. Void. My body is a diamond mine, which is to say, it causes great suffering. I'm afraid of my own handwriting. I think it might hurt people. I know my suffering is inevitable. I know that as I lay here, a scrap on the floor, that the promises of love, time, and death are not meant for me, but I thought the rest of you might have been spared. I see now I have written a death sentence. You'll come awake just in time for the snack part, but after that, it's over. It's over. It's overt. Like the opening of the window in a Boeing 757, I'm pretty sure that none of us can stay here. Mothers are looking now at their children and dogs, but I'm sorry. We will soon be looking at only atmosphere. Thank you.
Born in Ohio, Ron Horning grew up in Peru and Brazil, and after moving to New York City, worked as a bookshop clerk, a short order cook, an advertising copywriter, a freelance journalist, and a financial editor and analyst. His poems have appeared in The New Yorker, Vanitas, and The Hat, and he's written prose for Aperture, The Village Voice, LA Weekly, Index, and the Brooklyn Rail. From 2001 to 2005, he edited the poetry newsletter I Saw Johnny Yesterday. In 2014, Color Treasury published a trio of poems titled From Philip Drunk to Philip Sober. In 2016, Untitled brought out a collection of 3 more poems titled Blind Date. Horning lives with his wife, the artist Anna West, in Beacon, New York. Ron Horning's poems have a visual solidity on the page that their oral adventures do their devilish best to subvert. He regularly composes multiple long-lined stanzas, each divided into a mere handful of sentences, making excerpting from them a sweat-inducing dare to the critic or commentator. They seem like long, involved sentences in prose, but instead of dutifully conveying the listener to a predicted destination, they wind and wend and eventually end, but the trip, not to mention interstices encountered en route, ramifies and results in an experience more than exponentially delightful. Horning has also written short-lined poems, but the long limber limb seems his native precinct. However, in a recent series from which he'll be reading tonight, Horning pulls back from his prolific profusion to play word games in a more focused zone. October 15th is in rhyming couplets beginning, "A new bird has been discovered on the edge of the marsh. Tomorrow morning, the Secretary General will issue a harsh protest to the following nations. Talk about fun. Glynis Everhard and her pet rattler enjoy the sun." So there is still the hopping about. We'll never know which nations. Whether his poems take the form of travelogues, memoirs, or interior monologues, Horning's linguistic precision is razor sharp. We always feel we are left hanging at the end of a line or poem, at the exact syllable intended by the poet. Geographic realities, New York, San Francisco, Ohio, Greece, make their presence felt in Horning's work. And there's a film noirish ambiance hanging over some of the writing. But more than anything, it is the writer's conscience, his devotion to manipulating narrative and blurring generic distinctions, that remains in one's head long after the last limo has departed. Please welcome Ron Horning to DIA.
Pretty nice. Thanks to Vincent for inviting me to read and for that ace introduction. Thanks to Megan and Dia for having me read and for allowing me to introduce Michael Brewster's acoustic sculpture, Standing, Drifting, Fluttering, Circling, which you heard during intermission. Thanks to Christine for sharing the bill and for reading her poems so well. And thanks to all of you for coming here tonight, a month later. The first 4 lines have already been read. This poem's called October 15th. A new bird has been discovered on the edge of the marsh. Tomorrow morning, the Secretary General will issue a harsh protest to the following nations. Talk about fun. Glynis Everhard and her pet rattler enjoy the sun. Prisoners riot. Spokesman says life is empty, dull. Governor promises inmates' lives will be made full. In a fascinating series that starts next Friday, you will learn all about the quick and easy way this madcap scientist earned $2.3 million and lost it. Enzymes believed to cause decay in molars may destroy antibodies that prevent duodenal cancer. Lawyer marries daughter of girlfriend and modern dancer. How are your plants feeling today? A boon to cooks. Market research study proves that nobody looks. Every team won every game. 10 Academy Award nominations, with trading highest in bills of small denominations. Been thinking of Peru? Here is your chance to go. For sale between 5 and 6, a baby grand piano. This next poem is in sections. They're numbered. I'm not going to read the numbers, although one of them has a subtitle, and I will read that. It's called Scorcher. Instead of shyly suggesting that you cross a street, the instrument of sensuous pleasure rips along a country road with a thrill of incredible acceleration, apportioned to move 2 passengers in utter glory. We buy more, use more, burn more, crash more, and mop up the blood and hurry on, as if the railroad could spread over a receiving yard like lava down Mexican hillsides, letting a car pass, while most knowledgeable guys tell the 2 directions apart, limp and supine. Any woman in her right mind would take the money, leave her husband, and skip a string-straight, poplar-lined Route Nationale in France on a summer's day. That growing dot in the middle distance is the blue bay of Nice, or could have been. And this section is the one with the subtitle, Indelible You. Lean, high-striding Johnny Mercer, undoubtedly the best-looking of all American bop lyricists, spent World War II in a poplar grove near a drugstore in the tiny Canadian town of Delburn in the province of Alberta. Leafing through magazines he pilfered from string-tied stacks the distributor's driver left early every Friday morning under a small roof shielding the store's back door. Johnny had the sloped shoulders of the enormously strong and a mind crammed with information such as the name of Alvino Ray's favorite place to surf. And by the time VJ Day finally came, he was a lot better off than some of the war's less gifted participants, including other musicians who'd contributed almost as much to the soundtrack as he. Nor was his leather windbreaker any less weathered than his friends. The last nut, his wife said when she opened the door and saw him. He removed a body from the bedroom and threw it away with her clothing, which he gave her a check to replace the next day. Other pieces of the old life were gone, too, their own and everyone else's. But they soon discovered that all you had to do was pretend to miss someone and you wouldn't miss anything, he flashed, glancing again at Charlotte as she painted her nails a mental midnight blue. The song came out in September and topped the charts, each phrase shaping a run of notes that pinned it to money. A mere twitch could pull you around one word to another, and not necessarily the next. He could see the ground under his feet, but that wouldn't stop an assault on the next lap he ran into while his wife was hovering elsewhere, as she usually did when he was on a roll like this, which he expected to last through Korea. Still, he would miss her lithe grace if she left him, or, for that matter, he left her. Neither was likely, though. They'd talked the subject to extinction a long time ago, and both were creatures of habit. Make that habits, he decided, reaching for the legal pad by a martini that had been mixed according to the exacting specifications of his California club's very best barman, one of those charmers who seemed to come from Santa Monica and nowhere else in this awkward country. The 5 friends chip in for a jukebox and follow a face in the catalog, which tapers sharply off the factory roof, once merely a drawing on onion skin. Again, he looks through his cards for a club in the dossier of desirable Spain a year ago, watching and waiting for a drop of oil to fall. None does, and Gloria Swanson, remarkably tan, rolls up a tempo of living that is supported, if not made necessary, an experimental receptivity to evenings a mile from her home's 6 curtains of lemon silk. Excuse me. On the subway home, I overhear lovers determined to sail through air, to scatter like snarling auspuff, as the pale sun of England at noon, minus a sandwich, makes the tunnel faster, scarred, battered, and cut to the appalling vicinage of an overcoat that chases time down the black line, smooth, limitless space, after we are hurried into the convention center on pallets, lying almost on the backs of our red necks, and not allowed to plug in or unplug anyone without permission from the union, which is never granted to new boys with clammy handshakes and resumes. If one tries to follow you, go back and pick him up. Exhilarated by a new reaction, the first physicist set spinning by lawn sprinklers does useful work with infinite smoothness, cheap to run because not harassed by husband or children, she realizes, fumbling on the doorstep for her keys, somewhat blinded by the deep summer glare that hung out in front of her apartment building most of the year. Not that you need it in Tucson, where spendthrifts who win contests are awarded half prize, thus a habit of signing checks, jamais content. They consider themselves escorts for wealthy women and forget that most of the openings still available lie ahead, like the new life, true love, deep understanding, Frank expected from each of the unhappy stockbrokers, young junkies, and newsstand vendors he brought home from street corners and movie theaters all over the city that was his identical twin and killed him before he got back, the older Vautrin in Carolyn's blackening sketch. The answer always given isn't even approximately true, say the last people who claim to remember a question in the same price range. Switch the bodies and pay for a difference too long, too wide, too hard to see out of, like a Frank Lloyd Wright balcony thrown over a brook and choking the distant city from view. There's room for all of us, they say, if not our luggage. The families that persist beyond any lack of a good reason to do so, not to mention gainful employment, and entertainment centers that scale from wireless earbuds to sleeping bird theme parks, such as the Brazilian rainforest, which will never use more sensibly than pastel cashmere, or the guy next door with his sweep of the avenue, his hammers of hell. But the shopping is good when the fighting stops. This next poem is called Blazinski. Alone in the narrow seat, eyes shut, listening to the engines as the jet plane sprays fuel in a tight circle over the Tyrrhenian coast north of Rome. He faces walls blotched by fresh posters for a political party, taller than the ship. On the dock, in one wall's violet shadow, the sky above blank, a man sleeps in his jalaba, picking up where the passengers left, a spear-top fence guarding the Maréchal on horseback, from eyes perpetually bright before an awful accident deepened the wish to hold hands and talk of nothing vulgar. But that would mean not talking or speaking up at all on a September day erased by amazement. The girl met the night before last, waving to a friend, far away, receding further, sheared soundless as glass underwater in the port, near a bomb barrier and flies. Did she want him to pretend he'd have a future too? On a terrace, say, the stars of Kaza flickering but not moving, blurred, the shutter open a full 4 minutes above the rue where a blue shadow du genre féminin kissed him on the forehead and told him to skid slow through Maroc, a litter of kittens asleep, autonomous as brown cleft hills where nothing wavers before him or jumps to attention, the sticky glass on a table suddenly smacked. A column of cool air sidestepped the heat into a front door that, pushed open, led to Thursday nights spent leaning forward through iron smoke under the shadows of a few Redbird 45s spinning from the ceiling over the band, no mistaking that bright yellow label or the elegant fast cartoon, even from across a room full of certain nuisances committed in a velvet dark. But she listens, doped and sleepy, and pats his wrist out of bed, where you have to be a shimmering salesperson to convince yourself of the reality of tightly draped flannels and blood that will capillate into wet-smelling Vichy that glow like purple amethysts from Mr. Rio's case, like his blue Smith & Wesson 44, oiled and gleaming. Eyes dark over a needle, fingers umber with cigarette stains, restlessness, a bowl of white irises that tips when I tell him Lélie Gousseau is also a great dancer, both yielding and cynical, like a family in a New York apartment that goes to a movie when it wants to bawl, she says, twisting the rough towel around hair still wet and listening to moths knock into rusty window screens, the honk of a car horn against a vast tapestry of crickets. This poem's called The Alkali Hotel. Waiters bring mizithra, fresh bread, and ice-cold securia out of the shadows to former traffickers, occasional wives, who navigate by flashlight until the last friend falls down steep attic stairs. No, he'd jump, perhaps overcome by grandiloquent spectacle, treasures ticking within reach of a lime green hand that will be broadcast round the world, triggered by her reaction to the attacks last November 17th, which broke every window and left so much dust in baseball caps. She shrinks back at once, her tan pumps empty. He listens to a tape of Britain's lost opera, The Lost Weekend, that Judy Hooper found when she cleaned out her brother's last apartment, Ganyard Woods flowing below, from the back garden along a root-broken driveway to the face of a home 30 to 45 years ago, pale with stubble and a hushed voice. He could smell tobacco, excellent for your health, provided it meets certain criteria for the arguments of airports, airlines, and governments over who should pay for a televised image crawfishing through Palestinian villages, bemused by the fuss, indifferent to subsequent apologies, and then showered with sand. A cosmopolitan cryptarchy, white noons float serenely from the boat shed to a house, in ruins again, an imitation of eternity that reminds the young pianist she plays too fast because she can't play Exile. Her urgent stabs at bracketing each shocked result, almost imperceptible in the lingering shiver of appointments rescheduled before the couple lay down that night on the floor of the room in Piraeus, 50 Sotero Dios Street. The next very few are from a manuscript that purports to be written or said by a very young man who's hitchhiked from New York to San Francisco, and then he goes back, but all of these are in San Francisco. This is called Private Eye. For some reason, I think Girardelli Square is aquatic park and walked to the end of Columbus one Sunday off. Pretty bad. So it must have been a lot different when Spicer came here with his transistor and a young poet he wants to sleep with, to bake off a hangover left from drinking and writing to dark. All you see now is a brick mall full of tourists about to be had. There's the bay, okay, but that's the beach? Where's one queer to bring to life ghost stories so much better now than a myth? Hard to imagine someone as real as Jack Spicer here for hours. And so, after managing to avoid what's happened to the place, I head back to the Dante and another dinner of pork and beans. But first I cross Broadway and, in city lights, buy flowers, poems by George Stanley, whose lines read like a small face that starts to glow as this room darkens. Maria, in our teens. Very little goes into the wastebasket parked below the sink that bugs might like. Drafts of poems, letters east redone, crushed cigarette packs, orange peels, cans washed clean, all the miscellaneous protection you have to tear through to get at whatever you want to smoke, eat, say well, think. Blistered green paint records the past occupants, +1. The Dante empties the basket for each successor. Between present and futures stand chance, logic, and not a lot new. But the cloud of gnats, or are they fruit flies, hanging above the flared top of the wastebasket, crimped like a night lampshade, is constant these summer days and nights. I see it from bed when I wake up, or if I happen to give the metal can a shove while shaving and wonder again, should I get a can of Raid? As I watch the minutes boil, here and then replaced, she said. This one doesn't have a title. then I just have to get away from the job, from my room, from Jack even, who once in a while will disappear himself. And since I know next to no one I didn't meet around work and don't have a telephone anyway, or much reason to call, I walk to Fisherman's Wharf, where the shopping malls moor, to gutted Market Street, where jackhammers stutter like rifles, to Golden Gate Park, blotted out Sunday by an enormous crow, or up to Coit Tower's panoramic view of what I have and lack. Though restless, I usually stick to the immediate neighborhood, Washington Square Park, friendlier than summer in New York, Chinatown's dark alleys, or Berkeley, translated by hitchhiking. Wherever I come from, I'm always glad to be back at my door and reaching for the key, as Dr. Levin said about Kate Croy in Another World, one I wouldn't have expected to leave a nick. This is in 2 parts. It's called The Letter. Slit the envelope, and almost at once, Myrna Moranville is dead. No details yet, but the crowd parts to let her in. Jim went first, tying a rope around his neck and asking Steve to back the car from under him, then jump out to snap a few Polaroids for Jan. He hadn't beaten her up nearly enough, not after what she said. Jim's legs hang limp, and Steve dives into his drowning thirst. Bill lands in a tree on the first jump, doesn't see a single R&R, just dangles and turns while VC sharpshooters give him a hand. The face in the coffin is wax under glass. Where are his glasses? And one summer, Johnny shoots himself in the mouth with a .22 on the second tee at Fairlawn, tired of booze, dope, and stealing, after he talks with dead friends while tripping. All of that passes, they say. They are so much happier. He'd like to be happy too, Myrna. Repose is the difference between stooping and kneeling. I look up from the letter and Akron is gone, like New York leaves after each letter from Frank, except for the writing. Even on hot nights, stray breezes from Columbus and Grant, or from Broadway further off, keep curtain shears stirring with all the layers of voices, especially restless after dark. Music starts, drinking gets heavier. The Barkers are waiting to pull in tourists who want to come and tourists who don't. Next block, Jack recognizes the mineral quality of staring, and I fall back on the day during which all of this began, excited to be here, not sure why, ready for what's next, and leaning lightly toward an orange and a cup of coffee. Soap and groceries can wait. I only want to beat the sun, go out and come back here before the street looks waxed and breathless, like me later, no matter what I think away. The last piece is prose. It's called Like You Know. Forgotten the missteps, malfunctions, and accusations that had characterized the worst summer either remembered, whether together or, was it possible, apart, both fearful their afterthought of a marriage following 6 more or less satisfactory years of living as one, would end like so many of their friends' marriages, with lawyers using the prenuptial agreement for target practice. Each had been married before, she once, he twice, and each had been unfaithful one time only, James with a client of his firm 4 years before, and Rachel immediately following her discovery of the affair, when she came home early from a business trip to Rome and found them entwined, naked, and asleep on the black leather couch in front of the living room TV. Rachel had screamed the blonde out of the house without letting her put her clothes on, broken James's nose with the nearest glass ashtray, and made sure she was fucked silly by an old boyfriend, not her ex, never, within 24 hours, then gone home and told James about it in hair-raising detail, delighted to watch him squirm with a white cast on his nose. Nor did she mind the client's subsequent defection to another agency. But they had survived all that with relative equanimity. At least there had been no known repetitions. And then they decided one tipsy night in July to get married at City Hall without telling anyone until the post facto celebration. Everything changed soon afterward. Everything, including memories of infidelity, faded to gray though they were, and any meaning still left from previous marriages, even if they no longer remembered their earlier spouses' middle names, birthstones, or astrological signs. "I don't know mine," James had joked. "You're a liar," Rachel replied. And so the honeymoon summer went, despite trips to foreign cities, Rome probably a mistake, and to remote beach towns on the Gulf of Mexico, from the Florida Panhandle to Brownsville and the Rio Grande. And despite a stream of gifts, the thoughtfulness and extravagance of which smacked of sarcasm more than generosity, or so each thought. Was the gold lighter an attempt to keep her from stopping smoking again? Was the lifetime membership at his penthouse gym a way of saying he'd gained weight, or was it a memento mori, the framed certificate, a grinning skull? These were questions without answers, of course, not that any had been offered, and neither of them certain the long days would last. Thank you.